Today I'm going to do something different. I'm going to basically explain Han and Leia's characters in the OT using a quote from Return of the Jedi in this book. So I want you all to sit back, listen, and then we're going to ask ourselves why they don't make sense in this. Okay? So this is Steph. Get your seatbelts ready. Buckle in. Because we're going to do a little bit of exploring. Characterization, mythology, what Star Wars is supposed to be, modern courtly love, and why the Disney canon went way off the rails. Han and Leia's story arcs are intricately tied together. Their romance cannot be easily dismissed when, among other things, the novel Return of the Jedi, written by James Canon, writes about Han looking at Leia with deep love, special love. For she was a special woman, a princess not by title but by heart. Her fortitude astounded him, yet she held herself so lightly. Once he'd wanted whatever he wanted for himself because he wanted it. Now he wanted everything for her everythings. That is the Han Solo that we finally see at the end of Return of the Jedi after his long... So what we see here is basically a characterization, Han realizing how much he loves Leia, how much he needs her, and how far his journey took him. Realization that who he had been before was not who he would become, and his life had been a journey up to that point. It is a beautifully rendered paragraph, and I want to thank Mrs. Nerf Herder, who posted that on this channel, for finding that. I given away my Return of the Jedi book years and years ago, and I've since ordered a new one because I want to start going through these books, the novels that went along with the OT, to figure out what else we're missing. Because here's the deal: George Lucas commissioned novels to enhance the story, not to explain it, and that's the difference between Diz canon and the real canon. So let's further explore Han and Leia. So here we have Han Solo, smuggler, pirate, scoundrel, self-protective. And Han has basically become a self-protective individual. He comes off as greedy, money-hungry, but it is a facade to hide who he truly is inside, which is a decent man. In the original origin story, he was the kid who wanted to be legitimate. He wanted to have a sense of purpose, and he had a sense of decency within him that wouldn't go the distance in order to satisfy the urges of people who were not legitimate. Case in point, his commanding officer when Han met Chewbacca. We all know that story, but I'll explain it to you again. When Han meets Chewbacca, it's on a crippled ship. Chewie's trying to save these orphan Wookiees, or these Wookiees that were these young Wookiee cubs that were being taken to the spice mines of Kessel to be slaves. Chewbacca had tried to rescue them. Han boards the ship, meets him, and because Han was basically raised partially by a female Wookiee who was the cook on the ship that he had found himself indentured on as a child, he understood Treywook, and he felt he owed her something. And Han is a compassionate human being. He's got a big heart. He tries to hide it, but it becomes very apparent. He has a conscience, and he saves Chewbacca by stun blasting his commanding officer, and he loses his chance at being a legitimate person with a legitimate purpose. At least in his mind at the time, the Empire was that. Now, there are many people out there that debate on and off would he have lasted with the Empire as a naval officer and as a pilot. I'm not sure, but when you look at the young Han Solo All he wanted to do was go to the academy at Kurita to become an Imperial fighter pilot. That's what he wanted to do. That was his dream. He achieved it and then lost it because he just couldn't hurt a Wookiee. He did the right thing, but he lost his chance of being something more than what he'd been born to, which is basically a gutter snipe. So that's Han as we meet him in the real canon. He's at the cantina. He's already in trouble with Jabba for dumping a load of spice. And Jabba wants his money back. And you meet Greedo, one of Jabba's thugs. Han blasts him. The reason why there's a big fight over who shot first, Han or Greedo, and in the movie Han shoots first, which is a Clint Eastwood thing. In when Lucas went back and repurposed it, he wanted Greedo to be able to shoot first because he was more interested in what would John Wayne do. And honestly, when you look at Han Solo and look at the origin of this character and you look at the evolution of this character, that character is more like one of John Wayne's characters than Clint Eastwood's in lots of ways. I mean, there are similar, there are shadows of the man with no name, and yet there's a lot of Ethan from The Searchers in Han. So that's the Han we meet. Han comes off as the guy that doesn't want to be nice. He just wants to be paid. But when you start peeling back the onion, there's a reason why he needs money. And it's not, there's legitimate concerns about him being greedy. And he is in a way. But he's also got to pay off Jabba. The world that he lives in is not clean. It's not concise. It's not, I'm going to use this word again, legitimate. Everything is done under the table. And Han it survives in that world basically very well. And that is, we meet a jaded cynic of a man who has grown up with nobody to care for him. And then he meets Leia. Now, this little, this romance, I'm going to read you something, and then I'm going to let you guys decide for yourselves. Indeed, Leia is a career woman with her own hero powers. She has refused to betray the rebellion, even under torture, and now she does not scream, faint, plead, or cry. Rather, she introduces herself to Han with the comment, "Looks like you managed to cut off our only escape route." To which he responds, "Maybe you'd like it better back in your cell, Your Highness." Such is the stuff of modern-day romance, modern-day courtly love. The princess and the pirate will eventually become a match, but it is the fashion these days for the protagonists in the affair to begin their relationship with antagonism. So where does this antagonism come from? I think partially, when you look at these two strong-minded individuals, it comes from the fact that neither of them are really welcoming any sort of relationship. Han is very comfortable being alone. He is worried about and self-protective of his own feelings and himself. And Leia, who had just lost everything, I mean, her entire culture, her planet, her family, is very self-protective. She's afraid. They both are in their own ways. And that antagonism, I think, is spawned from that, and also this mutual attraction that they have for each other. Han's never met anybody like Leia. And she has never met any man like Han. The thing about it is this. When Han Solo looks at Leia, he doesn't see the Princess of Alderaan. He sees a beautiful, vulnerable girl who hides behind a mask, like he hides behind a mask. His mask is the mask of the scoundrel. Hers is the mask of the cold ice princess, and they're both masks of self-protection. So let's go to Star Wars The Magic of Myth once more, and we're going to go onto page 64 and 65, The Belly of the Beast. The passage of the threshold to spiritual and emotional transformation often requires a form of self-annihilation. In this transition, the physical body of the hero may be slain or even dismembered. In the first film, the heroes were dragon slayers, Now they will become the slain, and each will undergo symbolic death. For, in psychological terms, the hard shell of the hero's ego must be shattered in order to gain access to the spirit and the heart. As Joseph Campbell made clear, the hero's journey requires a separation from the world in order to penetrate some source of power, and this will eventually lead to a life-enhancing return. When Han and Leia leave Hoth, they are chased by Imperial Star Destroyers. Han escapes by piloting the Falcon into an asteroid field, and then into a cave on one of these giant rocks. Unknowingly, he has set the ship down in the stomach of a giant space slug. Once again, George Lucas has woven into the story the imagery of consumption and of the journey into the belly of the beast. With its great toothed jaw, this particular beast is the cousin of the dragon. Han, Leia, chewing C-3PO have all been swallowed whole, just as Jonah was swallowed by the whale. Like the hero's earlier transit through the Death Star, this experience will lead to a rebirth. This time, however, Han is able to cross the threshold unaided. To be able to pass in and out of the dragon shows that Han's metamorphosis is nearly complete. He found the compassionate side of a cynical nature. At the end of Star Wars, now he will find love. The mystical marriage. With this rebirth, opening of their hearts to love, the real romance between Leia and Han is just beginning. But this is a good time to look at the place that love holds in the hero's journey. After the obstacles have been surmounted and the monsters slain, the hero and heroine's ultimate adventure is the mystical marriage. 12th century troubadours telling stories of the likes of Tristan and Isolde transformed Western concept of romantic love, exalting the love between two people, a man and woman, to this level of sacrament, which is something lost on Lucasfilm, but we'll go back on that. In the myths and fairy tales dating back from the medieval period and before, the life-enhancing treasure and vital forces held hostage by the dragon are symbolized by a woman, the complement to the male hero. Mystically, she represents the sum total of all that can be known, and since this is a journey of discovery, it is the hero's job to come to know her. Joseph Campbell put it this way: as the hero progresses in the slow initiation in which is life, the form of the goddess undergoes for him a series of transfigurations. She can never be greater than himself, though she can always promise more than he is yet capable of comprehending. She lures, she guides, she bids him burst his fetters. And if he can match her import, the two, the knower and the known, will be released from every limitation. Woman is the sublime acme of sensuous adventure. According to the rules of courtly love, however, the hero must earn the maiden. In the course of the Star Wars story, Han has already performed 3 typical tasks for his princess: fighting his way to her side, rescuing her, and working in the service of her surrogate father, the rebellion. Now Han shows Leia his gentle heart, and their true love begins to bloom. Page 76 of Star Wars: The Magic of Myth, Sacrifice and Betrayal. So as Luke begins to access the Force, he gets a vision of the future. This glimpse of Han and Leia in pain causes him to leave impetuously for Cloud City before his training is complete. Cloud City symbolizes the dangers of illusion. At first it appears transcendent as it rises above the planet Bespin, yet in reality it has a dark underside that will prove a crucible of sacrifice and betrayal for the heroes. The opening of the mind and heart to spiritual knowledge requires a sacrifice, and this sacrifice is all too often accompanied by betrayal. In Norse myth, the god Loki, not the superhero from Marvel, arranges for the death of the beloved Balder. In Christianity, Judas Iscariot sells Jesus Christ for 30 pieces of silver. In the Star Wars trilogy, the betrayer is the smooth, charming Lando Calrissian, a one-time comrade who embraces Han and then delivers him to Vader. This crisis will set Lando on his own hero's journey and lead to his transformation and Return of the Jedi. Vader decrees that Han will be frozen alive in a tomb of carbonite. This carbon freezing chamber is yet another symbol for hell, with the sulfurous fumes and red-yellow glow. It is as if the city were a glamorous veil laid over this treacherous foundation, a magical illusion hiding the hellhole below, where Han will be turned to stone. The act of turning a person to stone is found in many mythic stories. For example, as Lot and his family flee the biblical Sodom and Gomorrah to escape God's wrath, Lot's wife looks back and is turned into a pillar of salt. Perseus uses the Gorgon's head to turn his enemies to stone. Han is turned to stone as he is encased in carbonite, and his rescuers will have to descend once again into the underworld of Jabba's lair to reclaim him. Orpheus travels to the kingdom of the dead to search for his wife Eurydice, but it will be Leia who rescues Han. And in fact, Han's last words before entering the carbon-freezing chamber are an acknowledgement of Leia's love. His heroic acts have been dedicated to her. Okay, let me tell you, people who disagree, his heroic acts have been dedicated to Leia. In the Middle Ages, when the heroic path became the way of the heart, and the hero only attained the highest expression of his masculine power when he was able to surrender it, the woman's role was also transformed. She was no longer just a helpless victim to be rescued from the dragon. Instead, she herself became deliverance, the hero's domina, lord and superior, determining the purity of his motives and value of his actions. Resurrection, page 93 of Star Wars: The Magic of Myth. In the third film of the trilogy, each of the heroes faces enormous tasks and discovers new inner resources that allow him or her to triumph. Leia, in particular, is full of surprises. As the movie begins, she disguises herself as the bounty hunter Bausch and forces her way into Jabba's court to rescue Han. Jabba, a monstrously fat and maliciously destructive creature, has kept Han encased in his carbonite tomb for the sheer pleasure of seeing the pirate's innate vitality imprisoned. In the middle of the night, Leia sidesteps the guards and melts Han's carbonite shell, allowing him to rise miraculously from the dead. This part of the story has its own mythic overtones. In Greek mythology, Persephone, the daughter of the goddess Demeter, was abducted by Hades, god of the underworld, and taken to the land of the dead, where she was imprisoned. After a long search, Demeter obtains her daughter's release, a resurrection and reunion that symbolizes the return of spring each year. But for Han and Leia, the joy of the reunion does not last long. Jabba has them surrounded and consigns Han to the palace prison, where he is reunited with Chewbacca, while Leia becomes Jabba's slave, chained to him like a pet on a leash. It remains for Luke to stage the rescue, but although the Force has grown strong in him, he too is captured and is dropped into the dungeon, where a hungry Rancor awaits. Now, I'm going to end this with, not only does Leia save Han, but I want to, because this is really an important thing that people so miss. The last thing Han hears anybody say before he's put into carbonite is, "I love you," and it's Leia saying that. The first thing he hears when he's miraculously pulled out of the carbonite is, "One who loves you," and it's Leia again. He's confused, he's blind. This is basically a rebirth. If you look at the whole scene, that's exactly what it is. This man has been through hell. He really has. In every way the way that Lucas intended that to look like, and in every way that's practical if you really think about it. And in no way does the Han Solo at the end of Return of the Jedi, after everything he and Leia have been through, would he ever give up on that woman, because she never gave up on him. She is the first human being that ever really cared about him. I want you to understand, this is really major stuff for this character to have gone through, and the lazy way in which his character was rendered in the TFA, and even in Solo, a Star Wars story, is a disservice not only to the character, but also to George Lucas, Harrison Ford, and the fans. And Leia has been, they both do a 180 character reversal. It's a regression. It's back to this latent adolescence that I think a lot of people have now, and instead of trying to figure out how to be an adult and to grow up and acknowledging you change every day, you are never the same person from 1 hour to the next. You can't be the same person you were 10 years ago. For instance, if Leia Organa at the end of Return of the Jedi could see herself at the beginning of A New Hope, she is a different person. That was basically an unformed girl. She's grown up to be an adult woman with all the things that make an adult woman a woman. Han, if he could look back at himself at the end of Return of the Jedi, is not the same man that he was at the beginning of New Hope. And the fact that they were so unoriginal that they had to do a 180 character reversal for these guys instead of sitting down thinking, where have they been, what have they been doing, and where are they going? What is Han and Leia married? What have they been doing the last 30 years? They didn't do that. They just shucked away the continued, accumulation of knowledge, insight, wisdom as people grow older to tell a story that was basically, sadly, a ripoff of A New Hope. So they could introduce these new characters that, again, were poorly written and sacrificing the essence of Han Solo and Princess Leia and Luke Skywalker, but I'll get into him using the Magic of Myth at a later date. I just wanted to talk about these two because A, they're my two favorite characters. B, what has been done to their characters is just, it's a crime, and it's not who they were at the end of Return of the Jedi. I can't recognize them. It's really, it's staggering. No one thought, does this make any sense? Because when you look at what George Lucas did, Star Wars, The Magic of Myth, and you look and see what it written down in this form, you suddenly see where Disney Canon has dropped the ball. I want to know what do you guys think? I mean, what do my viewers think of this? Because to me, it is just staggering. It truly is staggering. The weakness that has been brought into Star Wars as far as rendering the original trio. And I wanted to start out with this, talking about Han and Leia, because as Mrs. Nerf said, their character arcs are intrinsically entwined. They are the lovers in this saga. And to see something, I don't know, a reach for relevancy, thrown into a fairy tale, and people going, what? It's staggering to me, the lack of knowledge of who these two people were, at least at the end of Return of the Jedi. And I just want people, I want to know, what do you guys think? Because I'm still flabbergasted at what has been done to these characters. So this is Steph, signing out. See you around the galaxy.